So in this segment, we're going to be discussing effectively Suella Braverman and other Tories just getting involved in the culture war and just essentially I think it's called stochastic terrorism, where you kind of encourage violence against other people. What she is doing here is incredibly dangerous, and she has to go. She's there for a reason, which is she gets the heat off Sunak to an extent because people talk about her more than they talk about him, and it makes him look slightly better. But this is ugly.
She told the Sunday Express Keir Starmer is secretly delighted at his web of cronies' schemes to block our plans to stop the boats. He's in this for political point scoring and doesn't care about what's good for the country.
Is it good for the country to ignore international law and abandon people into the harsh sea, the heartless ocean? Honestly, is that what's in the interests of the British people? I don't think so. People don't support the Rwanda scheme. Even when in the Question Time audience, where you had a room stacked with Tories, they didn't support it because it's not a good scheme, and I don't think people care for it that much. And even if you want to make the financial argument, the amount we're paying for it is just a bad idea.
All the British people. He's even successfully campaigned to halt this government's attempts to deport vile foreign criminals, including rapists and murderers.
So one of those people was, I think it was back when Theresa May was Home Secretary. It was a guy called, I think it was Abu Qatada, where they were trying to deport him to Qatar, but they couldn't guarantee he wouldn't be his human rights wouldn't be abused, and that's one of the reasons why the courts stopped his deportation. Some of these quote foreign criminals were born here, and the government have tried to deport them to places like Jamaica, places that they've never been to. It doesn't make sense. The fact is that if you're born here, if you're raised here, and you become a criminal, realistically, it's our fault that that's happened. It's not the fault of another country that this has happened, because the crimes happened here and they were raised by people here. It's a failure of the British system. So it's just silly. We have a lot of internal problems in this country, but the idea that we have to just deport foreign criminals or whatever, that's not kind of one of the major problems we are facing.
It's a total betrayal of their victims, all so he could attack the government. Well, joining us in the studio...
And again, the idea that he campaigned to halt the government's attempts, if she's talking about him as kind of a politician, again, I don't blame Starmer for doing any of that stuff. If she's talking about him as a lawyer, again, standing up for human rights is, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Even as a lawyer, if he did that as well, that's something to be commended. Because that's what lawyers are meant to do, stand up for rule of law, typically. That's what the courts are meant to do as well. So, her attacks on Starmer on this one is just incredibly ugly.
In the studio is Matthew Thompson. So, look, this is fighting talk, isn't it? A war of words.
It's not fighting talk. This is culture war nonsense. No, don't big this up to be some sort of like she just landed the right hand on Starmer. Let's be honest now. It's not fighting talk. This is ugly. Very ugly.
As you said earlier.
Yes.
It's quite bold, though, isn't it, from the Home Secretary?
I mean, it is. And, the front page of the Daily Express says it all. Sabotage. This is a clear attempt to portray Labour as in some ways acting against the government's plans on illegal migration. Illegal migration is going to feature more and more in the news as we head into a potential election, as early as next year, who knows.
Because that's all they have. That's all they have. They can't talk about the cost of living. They can't talk about the economy. All they have is culture war. As a journalist, you should be pointing this out.
It's a key issue for lots of the demographics that both parties are trying to target.
No, it's not. It's not, though. It's the key issues are like the NHS and the economy. It's generally not the small boats crossings.
And so that's why we're seeing it so prominently. But what's different about...
They're trying to make it an issue, geezer. That's what's happening here. They're trying to make this into a problem when it's not a problem.
Like this, I think, is that it's almost a singling out, because the Express actually names one of these so-called web of cronies that the Home Secretary is referencing, which is a woman called Jacqueline McKenzie, who is a Labour Party advisor. She's helping advise the Labour Party on their election manifesto, in fact. But she's also a director of a charity called Detention Action, which has done a lot of legal work against not just the Rwanda plan, but lots of Home Office immigration policies. Sky News actually caught up with her last night and asked her for her reaction to being at the centre of this latest political storm.
It's really worrying because, this is endangering. I'm someone that gets quite a lot of hate mail. One of my colleagues has already had a physical attack and somebody is on trial for an attempted murder of him.
And this is something, not that the Home Office is encouraging this, but what she's saying is this thing is a problem. These politicians, these Labour politicians are a problem. These activists are a problem. We're doing our best to deal with them, but, we're being constrained by the courts, etc. If only there was something we could kind of do, and we will continue fighting and blah, blah, blah. And this is kind of not encouraging violence, but almost, it's very close. It's very close to that, in my opinion. And this is something that the Home Office and certain kind of right-wingers do, is they create a problem and say, oh, I'm trying to deal with this problem, but these other people, they're trying to stop us. They're the real problem, the enemies of the people, and all this kind of stuff. Saying, look at these. Look at these quotes. Starmer is secretly delighted at his web of cronies to block our plans to stop the boats. Trying to paint him as kind of an enemy of the people, especially when she says she's trying to do this for the good of the British people. All he's doing is attacking the government. He's stopping us. Even that picture there, they've used a really gross picture of it, I'll be honest. If you look at it more kind of the Deputy Prime Minister, Oliver Dreary, him kind of saying the fire service and I think the health service, I think HSE, are expressing concerns about the government's barge. That ugly ass boat that they're using with, that's incredibly dangerous. It could be, the fire service said it could be another Grenfell, effectively Grenfell on sea, which is even worse because they support Labour.
Had been to put some asylum seekers on the barge in Portland, in Dorset. Why has that been delayed?
Well, of course, we have to undertake a number of inspections and other measures to make sure that these vessels, and this vessel in particular, is suitable and ready. But I'm confident that in the coming weeks, we will have people on those barges. And it's important, Martha, to remember
in the coming weeks, because the deadline was supposed to be the end of July. That's what Downing Street told us was going to happen.
So they failed to meet their own deadline.
Reduce the cost of that. And there's two ways we're doing that.
These barges are incredibly expensive to run. I think they're more expensive than the hotels. So the idea, because they're paying some Australian companies to run these, so the idea that this is even cost effective is just stupid. And like I said, if something happens to the ship and those people die, are we just going to be like, oh well, they kind of deserved it anyways? This is the ugliest side of the Tories we've seen for a while, in my opinion. At least this lot.
We're building vessels like this, which will take people on board, which will be cheaper. And crucially, we need to stop people coming across the channel in the first place, which is why we're passing the small boats legislation and why we're proceeding with the
Just to press you on the barge, because there has been a lot of concern about that.
Here we go.
Are you satisfied there's no fire safety issues? Because the Fire Brigades Union are very worried about that concern.
Well, of course, we'll take into account those concerns, and that's exactly what we're doing. I would just gently say the Fire Brigades Union has donated £850,000 to the Labour Party since 2010, is affiliated.
Oh no, a union that's affiliated to the Labour Party, who would have thought? Oh no, surely if it's the case that these are biased actors, they would attack you on everything and anything. But what they're saying is this barge is incredibly dangerous. Let's not forget this is the party that oversaw what happened in Grenfell. Let's not forget that.
To the Labour Party. And I'm afraid what we see with this is exactly what we saw with trying to pass the legislation earlier this year through Parliament. There are many obstacles placed in our way.
Is it just the FBU, though? Because is it just the FBU? Because we've also been hearing that the Health and Safety Executive has made
so that's what HSE is.
Late intervention.
Well, we're confident that we will be able to address all of.
We're confident we are going to be able to. Surely you shouldn't say we're confident. Said we are going to address all of their concerns. When you say we are confident, it's just a get out of jail card. That's all that is.
These concerns, I'm absolutely certain of that, and I'm absolutely certain we will be able to get.
Stop the cat, bro. There's a reason why they're doing this. Is let's be honest now. The whole thing is that these barges are incredibly dangerous. If anything happens, these things will go up in flames, and the people on that ship will die. There's no real out for them. There's no fire exits or anything. It looks like it's incredibly narrow hallways and things like that. The only way you'd survive is if you probably jumped out of a window, which again, the windows are incredibly tiny. These are prison ships. Let's be honest now. These are effectively prison ships, and they wouldn't even do that to kind of the worst criminals in the UK. Instead, they're doing it to asylum seekers because they know the British public doesn't care. For the most part, the British public doesn't care about these people. They see them as kind of people taken away from us because the Tories have won the culture war on this, and the other parties really have failed to deal with that at all, and also the media have really failed to deal with that. But again, who's surprised that the British media once again fail? Even other YouTubers have failed and face planted on this, and we've covered that in the past. But it just goes to show you that this is just not one of those things that British people really understand. Maybe because we were never occupied really by another, kind of the worst forces of the last century. There were we did have kind of people leaving the country, especially children, but we didn't have kind of the amount of people leaving the country like we saw in other countries like Germany and France and other such countries. It's just tragic. You got the Deputy Prime Minister saying the only reason the fire unions are talking about this is because they support Labour. Absolute moron. Especially when you've got, Suella Braverman just openly attacking Starmer and kind of his team. You've got the Deputy Prime Minister attacking a union effectively, and you've already had one example of when someone was attacked over their kind of help of refugees. We will see more of this because that's all this lot have. You know the story of Pizzagate, where you had a certain kind of former, he was not allowed on YouTube anymore, giving out information about saying, this pizza place is, a pedophile ring, effectively. And someone went in there armed with a gun, and it could have gone south real quick just from that alone. Luckily, it didn't. But that's kind of the things that can happen here. When you say, Starmer's stopping us from dealing with, these refugees and whatever, it's a very slippery slope from having someone actually do something and attack Starmer. And at that point, what will you do when you have kind of the public attacking politicians or other kind of activists? Are you going to sit there and accept what you've done is stupid, or are you going to encourage it even more because this is all you have now? But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.